Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Kyowa Japan podcast. I am one of your hosts, Nick Overacker, and we have also
Tyler Mayberry, also a host.
And we have our non-host, a guest, you might even say, Daniel so-and-so from around here. But speak, Daniel.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, and Daniel is currently living in Sapporo, Japan. That's in the Hokkaido prefecture, the northernmost island of Japan. Well, I don't know that for sure. The northernmost large major island of Japan. And a very cold place right now. You said it just snowed a meter, didn't you?
Over the past several days.
Over the past several days. Okay, that's a little bit better than overnight, but that's still
a little different than overnight. Well, okay. Anyway, let's just jump into this thing. So, Daniel, back in your day, what first got you interested in Japan?
Well, to be honest, I was kind of having a crisis in college, figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. I really didn't have any idea what I wanted to study. I failed some engineering-related classes and programming-related stuff, and I was kind of left wondering what to do. So, really, it's kind of in a moment of clarity. One summer night, I was watching some movies. Actually, the two movies are Lost in Translation and 7 Years in Tibet, which are both movies about a person who kind of goes on a journey and is kind of troubled and comes back a different person. And especially the movie Lost in Translation kind of inspired me to be interested in Japan. And really overnight, I started studying Japanese. Like I said, it had a moment of clarity. I can't really explain it any better than that, to be honest.
I mean, that's
and right good. Away, I started studying Japanese language. And it was, for the first time in forever, I was like, wow, I really enjoy doing this, even though it's technically studying or, it's academic. I was like, wow, I was so into it. So that led to actually taking Japanese after the summer was over. I actually ended up dropping all of my other classes except Japanese, which were still engineering related because I hadn't changed my major yet. And
I was going to go down that path.
Well, I mean, I hadn't decided to study abroad yet, and I didn't know I was going to end up here and stuff. But I had found studying Japanese was, for the first time in my life, was really the only thing in any school-related stuff ever that I loved. I could honestly say that I loved.
And
I would do it.
Which year of college was this?
That was, oh my gosh. You're really making me feel like an older person now.
No. I mean, just like juniors, sophomores.
Oh.
No, not years. Don't date yourself.
It was actually in 2005, I think, is when all this happened, and I was a sophomore.
Okay.
Or junior. Sophomore or junior. I can't remember exactly.
So you had already committed to your major for quite a while at that point.
Yeah, I took
this crisis.
Yeah, I was, a full year into engineering before I realized that, wow, yeah, I really stink at math. And it's also not something I like doing.
I was actually pretty similar boat as you. This Japanese really kind of helped me pull through college and kind of was a light for me and something that I enjoyed doing.
Cool. So you had a similar experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so all three of us started as engineering. I'm still engineering because it's the thing I enjoy. The important thing is doing what you enjoy. not to drag this off topic, but Daniel, were you by any chance electrical engineering? Was that your major?
Yeah, electrical with computer option.
All right, all three of us.
Computer engineering.
We all started on that. That's funny.
All right. So yeah, we're similar.
Another interesting thing about you is that you were the one that pioneered the partnership with Shinshu University and OSU.
Yeah, and it was kind of a quirk, to be honest, because that was not my initial choice of college. There was two main options, which is Kansai Gaidai, which is really popular across, many different countries and many universities, and then Shinshu University, which was
it's a very popular university in Japan for all foreign students and Japanese students wanting to learn English.
Yeah, it's in a very it's a huge city, Osaka. Well, Osaka Prefecture anyway, which is basically one large city, if not technically. And it's a nice looking school. Lots of things going for it, really. But
what was the other option you're talking about, Daniel?
Shinshu University.
Okay.
And they had not had a program set up yet. They were in the initial, I guess, just communication, cross college communication, but no students had been exchanged yet and no staff had visited yet. So I applied for Kansai Gaidai once I realized how much I love studying Japanese and wanted to study it for real. And I got rejected because of my low GPA, because I'd been failing or not doing very good in a bunch of engineering classes. So it was a silver lining in that once that happened, I went back to the study abroad office and I told them, I had to go to Japan. I was willing to do anything. And they said, well, we've got this Shinshu University. The program's not set up. They said you actually risk getting 0 credit for the whole year you're there if you go. They're like, there's a 50-50 chance. We might be able to work this system and it might not work. But I took the chance, took the risk. And it was the best decision I ever made in my entire life.
Wow.
It was actually, I feel it was the greatest educationally, as far as expanding my education about learning about the world, myself, academic, across all things, the best thing I've ever done in my entire life. I learned more going down that path than anything else I've done. So,
yes, I think attest to that.
Yeah, that's quite the risk to step out on, but yeah, it's obviously paid off in your life. You went back, you lived there for what was it, 6-7 years?
After that, after about 11-month Shinshu University, graduated back in Oklahoma, and then after that, went back to work in Matsumoto again, which is the city where Shinshu University is. And I ended up staying there doing all different kinds of stuff for over 6 years after that.
Okay.
And
continue.
Yeah, now I find myself in Japan once more. So it's definitely a pattern.
Okay, so let's step back a bit, and I'm really curious about the early parts of the Shindai program. So tell us about your time studying in Japan, your time at Shinshu University as a student.
Well, I didn't really know what to expect when I got there. I had I looked through the photo group on Shinshu University's website to try to get actual pictures of what it looks like on campus.
Yeah.
But other than that, I really had no idea what to expect. I'd read people's blogs about traveling in Japan, studying abroad, teaching English and stuff like that. and read, so kind of knew what the stereotypical things were to expect about like convenience stores and vending machines and all that kind of stereotypical stuff, which, a lot of that is kind of the way that is described online or whatever. But
yeah,
I was totally surprised about what kind of place it was. It was not like I had imagined in my head. I was stricken at first by the beauty of it. Japan is full of mountains everywhere, and I felt it was so beautiful. I'd never lived around mountains before, and the area was awesome. So that was really kind of one of the first things I fell in love with and noticed. As far as like everyday life and starting school, at first it was overwhelming, and there were so many new things that literally just staring at the floor was like, whoa, it's a Japanese floor, it's a Japanese door handle, wow, that's different. Everything was different. Every square inch of everything was different. So I can't really say like I was, everything was just all at once was new.
Yeah.
You had to literally learn how to use the toilets all over again, so I was learning everything all over again. You definitely have to have an open mind if you're, prone to whininess and stuff. It can be tough, probably.
Yeah. It's kind of funny you talking about Japanese door, Japanese floor, because I remember times when I was walking down a road in Japan. I'm looking at things like, say, the bricks on a building. It's like, I don't know if I've touched a Japanese brick before. Go over and touch it. Now I've touched a Japanese brick. Just being sure I'm getting, the full.
Did it feel like a Japanese brick?
It felt like a brick, and it was in Japan. Well, that's thoughts like that.
Yeah, and that's a basic description of it, but that surpasses onto many other levels when it comes to relationships with people, friendships, food, the culture, the buildings you go to, the things you do, the sights you see, all of that. You could all boil it down to it's just like touching a Japanese brick wall for the first time. It's just like that, but for everything.
Yeah, but everything, like you said, everything is at least a little different. I can't think of anything that's exactly the same in Japan. And
there isn't anything exactly the same in Japan. That's what makes it such an experience over there.
Yeah,
just living.
It really at first
something new.
It really did feel like it was it could have been. It's on the other side of the world, but it might as well have been on another planet, is what I felt like at first. I might as well have been on Mars or something. But in retrospect, looking back after spending many years in Japan, the way I feel about Japan now and the way I experience it now, it doesn't feel like that anymore. It doesn't feel as different, of course, because I'm used to it and stuff. But at the end of the day, everybody's trying to do the same thing. They just want to have a happier life, and everybody works hard, and you have to do your homework. You have to go to work. You got to do your dirty laundry. Everybody's kind of, the end of the day, the human experience in that aspect is the same.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, politics in a way. Everyone wants to do the same thing, wants to accomplish the same thing in the end. We just have different ideas of how to do it, different ways of doing it. Except, unlike politics, I think that's, there's some things in politics where someone with perfect knowledge can say, this is the right way, this is the wrong way. But with, things like the way things are done in America versus Japan, it's just, this is a different way. And a lot of my year in Japan, my first year in Japan is just getting used to that different way and learning to kind of anticipate it.
Mm-hmm. Like, it goes down as detailed as going into like a restaurant or like a ramen shop and just seeing how people eat the ramen, you know?
Yeah.
How do they sit? How do they use their chopsticks? And
Do they pick up the bowl?
yeah, just every little thing about it you observe, and it's there's so many little details that you just overlook talking about it.
Yeah, there's nothing mysterious about it. I see exactly what you're saying, Daniel. There's nothing mysterious about it. We're all human. We're all doing the same thing in the end. And I guess that's kind of what makes it more interesting.
Well,
anyway,
how about after your time studying in Japan, coming back to America? Like, how was that?
I definitely had some reverse culture shock.
Oh, really?
I wouldn't say I didn't really struggle with it per se, but yeah, I was shocked about many things that I had lived in my own culture, lived around my entire life, but had never really seen, I guess. So Japan was literally an eye-opening experience. When I came back to America, back to Oklahoma, I was like, wow, we really do eat a totally different kind of diet here, and our people really do look totally different. I thought it was normal to be like this or live like this, but that's just one way, to Japanese people or any other people. Oklahoma is just as shocking as Japan is to a person from Oklahoma. Oklahoma is just as shocking to somebody else from somewhere else around the world. That's something I didn't really get. And I guess
and then it kind of clicked, maybe it came back.
Yeah, maybe it's kind of American to think that, like the American way is the only way or the best way. I mean, I know not everybody's necessarily thinks that way, and I'm not trying to be political or anything like that. But like culturally, it's like people don't think that, it's like all the standards are up to the standard of how it is here, at least among Americans, of course.
Yeah.
So that was something, that was something that really opened my eyes, was to know that, wow, there's totally other ways of doing stuff that, probably our country wouldn't agree with, but works just fine. The system works just fine. And it also opens my eyes to know that all these other places that I haven't seen, there's a gazillion other ways of life out there that I have never witnessed, but I know that they're out there. So yeah, the world seems, I don't know, a lot more varied, I guess, since coming back from Japan.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely see that. And it's definitely interesting coming back. And of course, America is a very diverse country. But you do see averages overall, like on average, people tend to do things this way or that way. And even people who, very much disagree about some things have this huge amount of things in common.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's something that's kind of interesting to notice coming back too. It's in Japan, after going there from America and being in Japan for that year, during that time, it's like, oh yeah, Japanese all do this thing the same way. Why do they do all the same way? But then come back and look at Americans, and a lot of us kind of do things the same way too. And I don't have a good example to give, but we do have ways of thinking and ways of doing things that are characteristic to us. And then, of course, there's a lot of variation within that. I mean, just on average.
Yeah, it's nothing you can really point out either. It's just something that we all have in common, and we just do it second nature. And you don't really notice until someone points it out to you that's not used to doing that.
Yeah. I guess my point going off on this tangent is just kind of a agreeing with what you say. You go to Japan and you come back and you're kind of surprised by how things are when you come back. You see America more as a society, more as a culture, and less as the world.
Yeah. After my time in Japan, I definitely had a deeper appreciation for my country and my culture because of what we're talking about. I saw it in a different light.
I realized here's just a kind of a specific example. I realized that America is kind of cheap. The cost of living here is cheap, I think. Yeah, fuel over in Japan right now, fuel is like 3 times as expensive.
Yeah.
For the same amount of rent, you can get an entire rent house in the States, but over here you get a tiny microscopic apartment, which as my family, when I video chat with my family, as it was once commented by my aunt, she said, it's like an RV.
Kind of the memory I have
an RV.
kind of the memory I have of fuel prices in Japan is kind of you're paying the same amount, but not per gallon. You're paying it per liter.
Yep, that's how I feel like it is pretty much. Yeah, they don't have to go as far, and their cars are smaller and they're more efficient at the same time too. But
which better be if you're paying highway fees. But that's just like driving to Tulsa here in Oklahoma.
Yeah, so that was something that a specific example of something that I'd noticed is I don't think most Americans, maybe, or I guess Western culture, kind of realizes that, hey, in probably most of the world, people don't cool and heat their entire houses. Like that's
true.
That's luxury. That's a luxury that's taken for granted.
That's very American.
I don't take it for granted anymore.
Yeah, we get central air and heating everywhere in America, and that's super American. I realized
that is one of the best things about America. Sorry, greenhouse gases and stuff. I don't know. Actually, they should be thanking me because I'm making more of them. But on a side note, I did hear that they've found evidence that the hole in the ozone layer is healing. So I can feel better about this.
Well, time to crank up your AC.
Yeah, and beyond the beyond just those things being cheaper, I think we are also more inclined to seek out cheaper things. Like there's a reason why there's a Walmart in every city, and a Walmart is one of the biggest stores in every city. It's because we are willing to sacrifice quality in order to save money. At least I am as a college student. I can't speak for all the fashion queens and kings out there.
That's kind of a general thing for America, is that most people are like that, and I don't think that has much of a thing in Japan for sure.
Yeah, I'm not
more than happy to pay for quality over there.
Oh yeah, over here is definitely all about quality.
Yeah, definitely.
Expensive is okay.
Although it's kind of funny, I was just taking our friend Lisa from Okinawa to Walmart, and she was talking about how she likes to always buy the Great Value brand, and how you, Tyler, hate the Great Value brand.
Yeah, I always make fun of her because of that.
So I guess that's one case where it's slightly reversed, but I'm for Great Value brand in a lot of things. In the things where quality doesn't matter too much. Okay, what's next on our agenda here?
Yeah, let's get back on topic here. So once you graduated, you went back to Japan working. And so what was your first job? How was that? How'd you get it? Let's hear that story.
So my first job was the English teaching route, which is a very, very common route to work in Japan.
Yeah.
The working, it's hard to get a job in Japan as a foreigner. Really, the problem is the language. You've got conversational Japanese and conversational reading and writing, which you can master after a while, after some practice. But to take it to the next level for business and academic level, and like translating, that's a huge step. That's a really huge step.
Whole another level.
To this day, I still, I still don't feel really confident enough to take it to that level. But in effect, that makes it to where, there's really, unless you're a very highly skilled professional, like, a doctor or a lawyer or engineer or something like that, there's really not jobs available over here for most people, except for English teaching. So that's how, I'd say, a huge percentage of people end up coming to Japan post-school route is teaching English. And I was one of the same people before when I wanted to go over there, consider different options. Basically, you can study in Japan, you can get married, or you can teach English. That's it's more complicated than that, but that really does cover the main routes. And I hope and wish that it opens up more, but
that's something that I see. Oh, you continue. We have a bit of a lag here.
I'm sorry. Well, anyway, so I searched online for jobs. There's never a shortage of that kind of stuff online. So I found one, got it all set up. Finally, the day came, moved, got rid of all my stuff at home, which I had been in the process of getting rid of my stuff over time. So got everything down to 2 suitcases and said goodbye to my family and moved. And the company that I was working for over there, which was actually in Matsumoto. I went back to Matsumoto again. Was there to help me, to receive me and help me get initially set up with my apartment and stuff. So they helped me through the first, basically onboard process. And then after, a week or two, I started working.
As far as there not being many jobs for foreigners in Japan because of the language barrier, that's something I really noticed actually at the university, at Kyou University. Like here at OSU, you probably remember a lot of the professors are international. We have a lot of professors from China, from India, from Korea, from you name it, Russia, and I think for me actually, my American professors have been the minority. But in Japan, all your professors are Japanese, with the exception of Yon Sensei, who is Korean. The foreign professors are normally the ones who either teach English or teach in English. And that's kind of reflective of that language barrier, I think.
I wonder if this has to do with like English speakers having a higher tolerance for non-native English speakers.
Yeah, that's my theory. And to kind of, expound on that, make it easier to see what we're saying. We can hear someone speaking with an Indian accent or Chinese accent or Russian accent, all this, pretty much every accent. And we've heard it before, so we can understand it usually with some work. But you speak to someone in Japanese and your accent's not good, a lot of times they just won't understand you at all.
Yes,
and I think it's because they don't hear many people speaking to them with a bad accent.
Yeah, that's true.
English is a global language, and that's kind of one of the consequences.
Yeah, we're lucky, aren't we, to be native English speakers? That's something that
it's our blessing and our curse. Makes it harder to learn other languages because it's harder to get that motivation.
Yeah, and there are plenty of people, and I've met people who I'm very impressed with, who are very smart, very highly intelligent when it comes to learning languages, and their Japanese is beautiful, flawless. They can do on the fly translation. They can talk about astrophysics in Japanese.
Wow,
that's amazing. And I think anybody, even if you didn't have a highly academic background, if you did put in the time and the practice to get to that level, that would open up many doors to work at other kinds, just any type of job you can think of. So, I'm actually looking for a job right now in Hokkaido, living in Hokkaido, and struggling with the fact that, it's like, wow, even after all this time, my Japanese is still not good enough to, or at least I don't feel confident enough to work in a lot of just basically, different kinds of sectors and stuff.
Yeah.
Or what I was doing back in the States or something.
Have you ever considered government work? Like applying to work at an embassy or something? I mean, it's not quite as impossible a barrier as it seems, I believe.
Yeah, I heard it's actually a fairly popular route for foreigners.
Really?
Like right after English teaching.
No, I actually really hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, I saw some
go to the embassy though.
Yeah, I saw some brochures about it at OSU, and I thought, I thought you had to have rich friends and make huge contributions to the president's campaign or something to get these cushy jobs.
Wait, you didn't make a huge contribution to the president's campaign?
No, not this time. I was too busy being a poor college student.
So, did we go over your first job?
No, we haven't.
Well, I just introduced it. Yeah, so I started working at a very small eikaiwa. They took me on. It was like this business was only about, I think, there's probably like 5 teachers there.
Okay, I'm going to interject just for a moment to say eikaiwa is an English school. It means English conversation.
Oh, sorry about that.
Like after school program English school. Yeah, it's not like an actual public school. It's
like piano classes.
Yeah,
or
like
karate
classes,
but English, but learning English. That's probably the way I would relate to it. About once a week, students come for 1 hour and they study English. Anyways, so I got a job at this small English school, mostly kid students, and I'll be totally honest, it was a complete nightmare. It was. I ended up quitting that job after a little of 3 to 4 months. I ended up quitting because I was losing my mind.
Yeah, I did.
It was a total nightmare. It was some of it was maybe my fault, maybe some of it was their fault. I'm not trying to blame or say that company was terrible. Well, the training was just basically shadowing, just being in the classroom with another teacher. I did that for like 2 weeks and just kind of watched how some different teachers taught these classes.
Uh-huh.
And I would say my class is probably about 80% kids, all the way from like almost infant to like middle school.
Yeah.
And then like 20% was like older college students or even a few adult classes.
Okay. Was this in Matsumoto?
Yes, it was in Matsumoto. And I was super pumped and super energetic and, show up to work early. And I was totally, of course, excited to start my whole new life in Japan. So I was devastated when I got there. And these classes were there were so many of them. It was like 5 or 6 classes a day with a little tiny break between it. And you had to write all these notes. Every student, every class, you had to write notes about them. So I was like frantically writing these notes during the class even. And I I guess I was just overwhelmed. I was so overwhelmed. Most of my younger students were totally out of control.
Yeah.
Which, that's, maybe that's my fault. I'm the teacher. I should be able to do that. But I wasn't, for whatever reason, I wasn't able to manage the classroom, most of the classrooms. And it was just going downhill, week by week, it was going downhill. And I got to where I was like, I couldn't sleep and was feeling sick and stuff. And I even considered going back home. I mean, I was completely devastated and heartbroken. I couldn't believe it happened. But I did end up quitting. I did end up quitting and found a job at another small Eikai one nearby. And I had a totally opposite experience.
Huh.
It was awesome. The class. Yeah, I loved teaching the classes. The kids were a lot better. So your mileage may vary.
Yeah, I taught at 2 different English classes during my time in Japan. One was I can't remember what that town was called. Tyler, you remember? Maybe
it was in the Azumino area, wasn't it? I don't remember exactly what it was called though.
Yeah. Well, that's not important. So I was in Matsumoto, taught in a small town there with the actual teacher in the room. And I was kind of guiding things and then just having her kind of give some direction on where to go from there. And she's able to kind of keep the children in order. And they were fairly orderly as it was anyway. And then I also taught a few lessons for our mutual friend in Matsumoto. And that didn't go well for me.
Really? What happened?
I cannot control a bunch of 4-year-olds or however old they were. I'm assuming they were about 4. I cannot control that kind of environment. Well,
especially if you're not the mother and you don't have the Japanese, that was an issue that I had was like, even though I spoke Japanese to a little kid, they don't understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's kind of funny when you're speaking to a young child. I don't learn child level Japanese. I'm speaking at an adult level. Using adult vocabulary. And that means I can't actually – a lot of the words I'm using, they haven't learned how to use yet.
They don't even know yet, yeah. So, and they respond better to female teacher. Usually the kids respond better to female teachers than male teachers. Yeah. And, there's definitely – and some people are just a lot better at that, managing a class like that. But I think there's definitely some improvements that could be made in the overall English class world as far as like throwing a new teacher in there or inexperienced teacher with a bunch of rambunctious children. It can definitely be really stressful and take a lot of your energy. But then on the flip side, you've got it's just it's the luck of the draw. You've got classes where the kids are like little angels, So I think generally they'll try to put all the difficult kids in one class, and they'll put all the gentler children in another class instead of mixing them up.
They don't cross-contaminate.
Yeah, well, because what will end up happening is the noisy kid will end up, just basically destroying the whole class. But so that I struggled, and even throughout my teaching after that, I struggled with that quite a bit, but nothing like that first job that I had. And I'm not going to name the place or anything. I don't feel any ill will against that place, but
it can be very demoralizing.
It was hard.
I felt terrible quitting that job.
Well, at the end of the day, you're only human. You can only do what you can do. And
at the same time,
I don't want to discourage anybody.
It's as good as a deal for them as this for you. Like, they don't want someone that isn't good at the job, let alone doesn't like the job working there.
Yeah,
that's true.
So it's
Well, and
good on both ends.
I hope to not discourage anybody from trying that. It's, you know,
Yeah,
I don't know, it's a
especially
reality.
if you're already good with kids. It's a good way. I don't know what to do with kids. They're strange animals to me.
I don't know what to do with kids.
And we are
So
strange animals to Japanese kids.
Besides those first two Kyou jobs, did you do anything else while you lived there?
So after doing Iowa for a while, I don't know, for a couple of years, I was just Iowa. And then I kind of wanted to try some different things. I had the opportunity to make some websites. So I made a few websites on the side.
Mm-hmm.
I actually kind of volunteered at this intern company, or not intern. I kind of volunteered at a marketing company and got some experience doing different stuff there, but it wasn't a source of income.
Is that our mutual friends company?
Yes.
Okay.
And I had the opportunity at one point to work in the study abroad office at Kyou University.
Yeah.
I think really because of the connections I had made from being a student there. I still knew the office staff, and to this day still kind of know them. They knew at one point I was looking for a job, and they let me. I only took it for 6 months, but they let me basically be an office assistant in the Japanese study abroad office.
Nice.
At Kyou University. So I got to experience, I wore business clothes every day and showed up and sat at my desk. It was
probably way too hot in the winter.
Yeah, their heating and cooling can be a little. I was actually cold a lot of the times.
Blasting those heaters in the winter.
Yeah. It's so bothersome.
I don't know. It was a 6-month contract, and I ended up not renewing it just because there was these giant windows right behind my desk.
Yeah.
And every day, I could see the reflection on my monitor of outside of the trees and stuff. And I was just, it was dry. It was the first office job I'd ever had. And I realized, office jobs don't agree with me. And it was driving me crazy to just see the outdoors, through the reflection on my monitor. And I was like, oh, I can't keep doing this. So
your next
decided
job
to not do that. And then I also had the opportunity to do work at an apple orchard for 3 seasons, which is, their harvest season lasts for several months, kind of in the fall, late summer to fall season.
Yeah.
So I did that for 3 different seasons on the side. And I always kept some form of English, either English conversation school or working at a public school, there's really 2 kinds of English teaching: working at an English conversation school, which is like karate class, or actually being a teaching assistant in an actual Japanese school in an English class. So the Japanese teacher will teach the lessons and then refer to you to, help repeat or do different stuff, talk, have little conversations with students. So, yeah, that was basically the different jobs I did. I was always looking for something new.
Yeah, it sounds like you really got around with career-wise over there.
Yeah.
And did this all take place in Matsumoto? Or did you vary cities around the area?
Yeah, the apple orchard is actually outside of Matsumoto a little ways.
Right, it's an orchard.
But other than that, no, actually, one of the schools, I take all that back. So, Matsumoto's stretches out so far, then there's the next city, but the space between Matsumoto and the next city is filled with city. So I'd say they were all in the Matsumoto area or surrounding areas.
Okay. Yeah, there's no like real countryside in Japan like there is in America. Like if Japanese people tell you that there's countryside, you're actually just going to like a smaller town. It's not an actual countryside.
They call all of Matsumoto countryside, and they're like high-rise buildings.
Matsumoto is countryside
at a station.
But like Matsumoto has a population of 500,000 or something, doesn't it?
Yeah. How can you call it countryside when there are high-rise buildings?
Sorry, I completely said the opposite thing of what I wanted to say. I thought Matsumoto was a big city.
Oh, okay. But
they said it. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. What I meant to say was I thought Matsumoto was a huge city, but everybody called it countryside. But it was actually the biggest city I had ever lived in. So I walked around and I was like, "Whoa, big city! Look at the tall buildings!" And they were just laughing at me, you know.
When the Japanese students came to Stillwater, Oklahoma, and they were like, "Wow, this place is so countryside," I thought that was weird.
Yeah,
like in Oklahoma, Stillwater is a city, you know?
Yeah, you see Wince over there? That's 12 floors. This isn't countryside.
Yeah, exactly.
Or not Wince, Drummond.
Well, in a place that's so densely populated like Japan, unless you're coming from a densely populated area, then it's just a whole new experience.
Not Tokyo, Osaka, then it's countryside.
Yeah, pretty much.
Tokyo. To me, Tokyo is like a space city. I mean, it just the amount of tunnels and concrete and byways and stairways and corridors and stuff that just like it's all interconnected underneath.
Yeah, Tokyo is really on a whole other level.
Yeah. Sapporo has an area like that. Sorry, Sapporo is where I live now in Hokkaido.
Mm-hmm.
It's the 5th largest city in Japan. They have these underground tunnels here, and those completely blow my mind. I mean, you can walk for 30, 40, 50 minutes underground, just going from place to place.
Yeah, I didn't notice this because... Oh, go on.
Well, I was just going to say they have these, they have entire shopping districts underground, several different, areas, several different districts, and they all have a different look to the tunnels. They have these beautiful mosaic tiling in some areas with, glass staircases that go up to the surface. It's quite amazing.
I've been interjecting whenever I hear kind of a pause, but with the latency, it ends up transmitting while you're still talking. When you start
talking. That's okay. We are thousands of miles away.
So yeah, when I was in Sapporo last year, I didn't even notice the tunnels that you were talking about because when I went underground, I was just going on a train. Of course, there was, above the ground, there was a snow festival. So I was going to spend most of my time above the ground. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, here they have it's like 3 levels of underground tunneling. Basically, it's like you go to the from the surface level to the subsurface level, and then from there you can go to the underground walkway level, and then you go down one more level to the subway line area. So sometimes there's these really tall escalators, that just like looks like a mountain when you look up when you're riding them.
Yeah. Okay. So one thing we've been wanting to ask about is what. Okay, so you've studied in Japan and you've lived and worked in Japan. What's the difference? I mean, what when you went back to live in Japan, what were the immediate differences to you in that new lifestyle? Your new perception of Japan, your new role in Japan.
As compared to studying there.
Yeah.
Well, you've got less free time for sure. More responsibility. I'd say the base. Once you're working, it's just like in the United States. The difference between a student or working is definitely, there's pressure to be an adult, and you've got to make a living. You got to pay your apartment rent and pay your bills. So there's more adult pressure like that. Adulting pressure, I guess you could
Just
say.
Normal adult life stuff.
Yeah, so that's pretty expected, probably. Well, what do you mean? Like, what kind of differences do you mean?
Like, the first thing that I
exactly
kind of think of would be like when you're studying abroad, you kind of have a sense of community with the other classmates.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't necessarily have that when you're working there. Is that true? I mean, that's just something
that's true. Yeah, that's actually.
Yeah, like basically.
You're right.
Yeah, I felt like as a student, since I'm put in this class with other people in my situation, maybe mostly from other countries like China, Korea, and so on, I feel like my friends were kind of tailor-made. They were made for me. I didn't have to go out and make friends. They were there. But if you're living and working in Japan, you don't have that experience, right? You have to make more of an effort to meet people. That was my feeling.
Yeah, that's totally true. I actually hadn't really thought about that aspect, but you're right. That is a huge difference, because when you're an exchange student, you've got this support network.
Yeah.
And people that, your same age and stuff, who also have lots of free time that you can hang out with or not hang out with if you don't want to. So, there's at least a large pool of people to potentially hang out with and have a social network with. But yeah, when you go to work on your own outside of work environment, what you do is up to yourself. If you don't want to make any friends, then you won't have any friends. Or if you just want to, walk around the mountains and do your own thing, you can do that.
So whatever you want to do, you have to be proactive about it, is kind of what I'm taking from this.
Yeah, I definitely say that's a good way of putting it.
So
what else?
Well, okay, let's build on this a little bit. How do you go about making friends as a shakaijin, as a contributor to society in Japan?
Well, the traditional Japanese way.
Go drinking?
Go to pubs. Yeah. That's a major part of Japanese culture, is like,
Yeah.
They call it nomunication, which noma means in Japanese means drink, mixed with the word communication. They call it nomunication because sometimes you got to be liquored up just to get people to open up.
Now that you say
that's definitely not the only way. Definitely not the only way to make friends. But
I realized that all my friends outside of university, when I was studying there, I met at the bar at Elbow Room. Yeah.
Well,
yeah, and
because if you want to make friends, you like Japanese people. Japanese culture is pretty different from Western culture in the aspect of, you don't just randomly start having a conversation with a person who's sitting next to you or nearby, or that maybe you even meet every day. Like, if there's no reason to be talking with them, you're generally a Japanese person wouldn't ask another Japanese person who they don't know, like, hey, who are you? What are you doing? Where do you live? Where are you from? So it's hard, it's harder for you. If you did that as a foreigner, you can get away with that somewhat, but I could see that being somewhat awkward if you're just trying to do that out at random when you're not in some kind of a setting where it's expected that these foreigners are maybe going to be trying to talk to you or something.
Yeah.
Or maybe even be taken off as like kind of weird or something. I don't know. I think a lot of foreigners in Japan can at times have trouble making friendships here.
Yeah.
And if you don't drink, then, then it can maybe even be a little harder. I mean, I'm not saying that's definitely not the only way, but if you look up, like I've been trying to figure out how to make a new set of friends here in Hokkaido, and I found that there's lots of like meetup groups that I found, like meetup.com or whatever has like different groups of foreigners, and the badminton club and the hiking club and the snowboarding club. So there's, I think there's options out there. But if you come here to work, that's all on you. You're leaving your whole set of your family and friends behind. Other than calling them, you've got to make a new family.
I think that's part of what's really exciting about going abroad is that you are starting from nothing and you're building up a new life. You get to be whoever you want to be if you are willing to put in the energy and the effort to be that person. And that's not just Japan. That's anywhere you go. Just you could move to another state and it's the same thing. Just be a new person. And I don't know. That was part of this thrill for me. I'm starting from nothing and becoming independent. You gain a lot of confidence finding your way in a new country.
Kind of reinventing yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is literally a journey. I mean, it's a journey. I think back, in historical times, people used to leave their families before emails and letters and stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe like a fisherman or something might go, or a trapper would go trapping for like 3 or 4 years, and then they would come back.
And sometimes that might be the last time they ever see their family, just start a whole new life somewhere else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I hope I can see my family again someday.
Well, these are much more connected times. I mean, technology is amazing. We are having this conversation from almost direct opposite sides of the globe. Over there, it's sunny. Over here, it's pitch black outside. And we have some latency, but that's, we're fundamentally limited by the speed of light, and that's about it. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I always think, especially doing a video chat is even more amazing.
Yeah. So
is there
the
anything
barriers.
else you want to add on to living long term in Japan, or just living in Japan in general? Anything, comments you want to add?
Well, it's not for everybody, but to me, I feel like when it's fun, it's 10 times as fun. The fun is like 10 times more extreme. And when it's hard, it's like 10 times harder. Because there's all these new variables, that are in your everyday life. So to me, that's attractive. I like the challenge of living here and adapting to a totally new place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You really do. You have to learn how to walk again. Everything is new.
But for some people, that's enjoyable.
Yeah, even after all these years, I still feel like there's so much left to explore and that I don't understand. And, one thing that has been really fascinating that I didn't realize would happen until several years after like speaking Japanese and making Japanese friends, and then getting to the Japanese language level to where I could really deeply connect with Japanese people and make some truly lifelong best friends, Japanese best friends. At some point, it feels like year after year, the more that I can communicate in Japanese, the more that I learn about Japanese people that I didn't know before.
Yeah.
And it's so cool to see this different side of Japanese people that, it's like, wow, at first I thought they were just like cold and shy or something, but, and then after you get to a certain level, you realize you kind of can communicate better and understand better, like what's going on inside of their head. And it's like, wow, I never knew it was like that. I just thought it was like this from looking at the surface. So, there's different levels of getting to know a culture and a people and language. There's
no
I still feel like I'm learning.
You just have to experience it in their language. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's no way to easily explain a lot of the things that I've learned about Japanese people and Japanese culture since I've been here.
Which just an experience.
I guess at some point you have to kind of think in Japanese, or not necessarily the language. You have to think in as a Japanese person to kind of understand what's going on inside their heads. And it's fascinating. I'm still learning new stuff all the time. I'm actually pretty excited to see what happens next.
Yeah, living in Sapporo must be quite a bit different than Nagano, but we will definitely get to that someday. I feel like in the future we're going to have a lot to say about Sapporo. You're kind of starting a whole new journey there right now. But let's.
Yep, I've only been here since New Year's, actually, or the day after New Year's.
Yeah, so we're going to bring you back on the show sometime to talk about that once you've had more time to, find your way around there and not have the plague like you currently do.
Yeah, sorry if my voice sounds weird.
Oh, no, you don't.
For several days.
No, you don't. You don't sound weird at all. It's just I know that you haven't been able to get out for a little while. So we're going to ask you just a few, kind of standard questions that probably anyone's going to ask you about Japan, especially Japanese people.
Yeah. Before we wrap this up, we just want to hit some basics here.
Yeah. Yeah. So
okay.
The first one, probably something.
Yeah, I feel like we've been talking a lot on the high intellectual level with not as many details about everyday Japanese life.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is something you've probably been asked lots of times, and every time you probably have no idea what to answer. You probably have to always think about it and always end up on the same answer.
That way.
Yeah. So, so here it is. What is your favorite food in Japan? Okay, so you're already pausing.
If you could see my stream of consciousness, this row of foods just is flying by right now.
But you've been asked this a lot, right?
Okay, I'm gonna cheat a little bit with my answer.
Okay. Better not say Japanese food.
I like Japanese set meals, which are also known as a teishoku, which it's just a tray of food that's got a bowl of rice, a bowl of miso soup, some pickles, and then it'll have some other stuff, usually some meat, and salad and stuff, but not, whatever. What's basically the main dish is kind of different.
Yeah, then you have korokke and you have
we're talking about Kano. When he says pickles, he doesn't mean traditional American pickles. It means just pickled vegetables in general.
Yeah. Typically,
sorry, Japanese pickles.
Yeah, the places we've gone to, it's usually a pickled Japanese radish, which is called daikon. I don't remember what the pickled thing is called, but the vegetable itself is called daikon. So yeah, you're talking about Kano. You like Kano, right?
Well, no, I mean, because set meals are everywhere.
Yeah, teishokus are everywhere.
Yeah, but Kano's good. cheap.
I would say, I love a good set meal because it's got everything you need. Usually, it's usually going to have some fried food, some fried meat or fried something on there, and usually it'll have a like shredded lettuce or shredded cabbage is almost always the vegetable that you get.
That's like their go-to over there.
Something, the variation is not that extreme among all different set meals, but you just can't hardly go wrong with a set meal or a set. What do you call it? A set? What is teishoku in English? Like a set plate? Set? I don't know what you call it. A set meal. It's like a tray.
That's the literal translation. Yeah, I mean, like te and teishoku is like set, fixed, standardized. Yeah. So like standardized food.
Yeah, standardized food.
Yeah, and the standardized part is
from Soviet Russia or something. Lining up for our standardized bread, and no, that's a throwback there. But yeah.
But of course, among all teishokus, as you two well know, the most delicious teishoku comes from a sweet old lady and old man who run a small little teishoku shop called Kano in Matsumoto.
Yes. Yeah, between the Shinshu University students, there's a small little joint in Matsumoto that we all love called Kano.
Yep.
And that is where my love of teishokus originates.
Yeah.
I would say I probably ate there, no exaggeration, at least 200 times. Probably more than that.
It is very good. And the chicken there, I haven't had chicken the way that they make it anywhere else in Japan or anywhere else, period.
It's so unique and so delicious.
Need to have someone
it's in the recipe. Batter.
I need that batter. Need that batter recipe.
All right, so now we're going to get a little more general, moving on from food before I get too hungry. What is your favorite thing and least favorite thing about Japan in general? If you could only say one thing for each.
My favorite thing, this is kind of abstract. My favorite thing about Japan is the fact that, I'm over here out of my own culture, out of my element, able to live my life, express myself, be my own person without any kind of cultural restraints, either Western culture or Japanese culture, because I'm not Japanese, so I'm not really restrained by their cultural barriers, and not my own either, because it's Japan. So it feels totally freeing. I mean, I feel like I can express myself, be my own person,
I've
do my own thing as much as possible.
I've never heard that expressed before, but that is one of my favorite things about it. And I just realized that after you worded it that way.
Yeah, I did feel very free in Japan. It wasn't like I was abusing that freedom. It's not like I was doing, what they call gaijin smash. I wasn't taking advantage of, my freedom as a foreigner, or at least that is the lack of expectations placed on me. It's just there was overall a sense of freedom that we don't have here. Not so much because of lack of expectations as different expectations.
Yeah, there's no expectations. I would, socially you can do anything you want to.
Yeah.
I think that's probably at the root of a lot of, the reason why a lot of people choose to come to Japan is to, get away from some kind of pressure.
Oh yeah, I've heard that
from their own culture or whatnot. wasn't necessarily what I was trying to get away from or anything like that. But
Yeah.
I do enjoy the fact that it's just like there's no wrong answers. You know, I mean, unless you're a criminal or something, but
or Logan Paul.
yeah.
That's not topical anymore.
Some people take their fact that they're a foreigner, you know, they don't. You know, I think it's important to respect the place as a visitor. Ultimately, even if you live here for a long time.
Sorry, no more Logan
and
Paul.
Stop memeing.
Least favorite thing, huh?
Yeah, let's hear that one now.
Least favorite thing. That's a tough one. I'm not sure what I don't like the most. Yeah, you might just have to cut out this giant long space.
Nope, you're stuck with it. We're do, 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 do. Someday we'll have someone with a soundboard on very good salary pressing
no wrong answers.
things for us.
It's like that's the first negative thing that you can think of right now.
I mean, I could list a few off the top of my head. Like I could talk about the cost of gas heating. Why were there gas heaters in my apartment and not an electric heater?
Okay. I can tell you some. I don't know if it's, you know, I think I'd have to think really hard and deep to literally, maybe I'm taking it too seriously, literally say my least favorite thing. But something that definitely is on the top of the list is the lack of like public free space and just space around houses. And you know, like there's no, people don't have, you know, yards here where they like water their grass or have like acres of land. Well, I mean, there are a few places like that, but in general, it's like, I mean, if you're walking anywhere, it's like that's the little sidewalk that you have to walk on right there. There's like these little paths that you have to travel down, and every house is just like, you know, I could open my window right now. I could probably jump from this window to the next apartment over there. That would probably get me put in jail, but
well, hey, I mean, that could be your claim to fame. But I did get the feeling that a lot of, you know, in Japan, or at least in Matsumoto, people who had lawns were either farmers, like they had rice planted there, or they were rich. That's the impression I got.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like, you know, and that kind of maybe also a little bit kind of lack of privacy. Like you're always, because everything is so clustered together that you're always just surrounded by a gazillion people and lots of buildings and stuff. So sometimes I could say it feels a little cramped. And there are beautiful countryside places here too, but compared to the U.S., I mean, you can't compare it to the U.S.
You probably can't blast your speakers there because you probably have neighbors above, below, and to either side of you.
Yeah, actually, the nice, sweet old lady that lives above us, I can hear her using the sticky roller on her wooden floor every afternoon.
Yeah, that'd be one of the things that would be frustrating.
And I'm afraid that, you know, it's actually not noisy or anything, but it's just like, I'm afraid that even, you know, doing jumping jacks, I was like, wow, am I shaking like the whole 3 rooms surrounding me? Or, you know?
Okay, yeah, I remember there was a time someone was complaining at the KaiCon about the person above them doing jumping jacks. KaiCon is the international dorm in Shindai. Yeah,
and of course, in any just apartment living, that's an issue, but.
Do feel
even
like
outside of the building, you know, it's just parks are very small. There's just not many places where you can just go and tuck away somewhere and just be on your own, or
Yeah, I've always wondered,
go
like,
out somewhere in private.
if I wanted to go practice baseball and play catch with my friend, like, where are you going to do that at? You know?
I don't know.
That's a good
You
question.
can't just go out and do that in Japan. That's definitely a negative for sure.
Yeah, so I kind of miss that. If you are near the mountains, you're a little bit lucky because you can walk up in the mountains and there's space up there too. But technically, you're probably trespassing.
Like, I remember when I was a kid, I would go to the baseball field with my friends and we would, hit the ball, play catch, practice baseball. But you can't just leave at any time and do that in Japan. Like, I think you have to pay money just to use the baseball field and go practice. Not only that, you're going to have to schedule it beforehand, and you're going to be with your whole team. You can't just hop on there with a few friends.
Yeah, so that's something I miss.
Yeah.
So yeah, well,
okay, yeah, I can definitely see that.
Any closing remarks?
If you've been thinking about traveling abroad, even if it's not Japan, even if it's it can be expensive, hard, or challenging to make that jump. But I'm not even necessarily pushing Japan, but I would recommend from the bottom of my heart, if you're ever thinking about living abroad, traveling abroad, studying abroad, do it. You won't regret it. Now is the time. It can open up a whole new world, literally, that you didn't even know about.
And that's a good note to end on.
It is.
I completely agree with that. So thank you for listening. And I believe that's the end of this episode. Tune in next week for episode 5, topic undecided. All right. Have a great week. That lemon cancels out the awfulness of the water pretty well.
Lemon cancels out your mom's awfulness pretty well.
Oh! Snap!